Hi there. In this week's video, it's just quite a quick one really, or at least I think it will be for me. Had a very good question in the comments section of my the first video that kick-started this sort of year-long YouTube project of mine, the shaker style panel doors video. My most watched video. Thank you everybody who's taken a look, and don't forget, if you do have any questions, stick them in the comments section. I will always get back to you and answer as best I can. Anyway, a viewer called Rachel asked the gist of what she was saying, but was too polite to say, I think, was, why are you fannying about with all this routers and grooving and stuff? Why can't you nail panelled pieces onto a backing board? That's a perfectly reasonable question. I think I say in the description on that video, I've made doors cabinet doors just about every way there is to make them, and the way I recommend now is the way that I do them in that video with a groover in a router on a router table. There's a reason why I stopped doing them the other ways, and I thought it might be useful to explain why that is in a quick video for you. So what Rachel is essentially asking is this: you have a backing board, 1/2 inch in this case, 12mm, and you just plant some mock panelling pieces on top of it. You nail that together with some glue, and boom, you've got a panel door. Except you haven't really. What you've got is a mock panel door. This is exactly the same technique as I used for the mock panelling in my window seat videos. You may have seen those. If you haven't, do go and take a look. There's nothing wrong with this, but you do need to be quite careful about how you apply them. Ideally, you would pin them through from the back, except with a 6mm 1/4 inch panel like this, there's not enough meat there to get a decent fix. So if you can't just sort of clamp them down, and when you've got glue in there, the surfaces do get a little bit squirrely, a little bit swimmy. So they do need to be sort of clamped very carefully to preserve the edges. So ideally, you're going to need something like a 21 gauge veneer pinner like this one, or some other kind of headless pinner. And not everybody's going to have one of those. So, you know, suddenly it's getting a little bit more complicated. If you think that an 18mm door, 3/4 inches is going to be too skinny, well, you're probably right for anything bigger than a little door like this. But there's a few other niggles with it. One of the things you could try is a thicker panel, of course, something like a 9mm. The trouble is, you are restricted by the thickness of the sheet materials that you get. Now, it is kind of an aesthetic decision, this, but I just don't like this thickness of panel in a shaker style door. I find it too heavy. The door thicknesses would be fine. A 12 and a 9 gives you 21mm door, but I just don't like this reveal. It's absolutely fine if you're making a mock Victorian, where you put a little bit of moulding in there. That works really well. But for a shaker style door, I find that too heavy, personally. Again, that's up to you. I don't personally like them, but that's your choice if you're happy with that. The chances are, though, if you do make this, let me just flip this around and pop a couple of spring clamps on there. Put it in there so you can see it. Now, one of the problems that you're going to encounter with this type of doors is that when you plant two pieces together like this, you're going to have a seam all the way around it. Now, that's not insurmountable, but it's not great. The bigger problem is, though, that if you're making doors this way, this style, you're probably going to use these little guys, flush hinges. They're the sort of hinges that you don't need to chop out a rebate for, so they're easy to use, cheap and cheerful. But here's the problem. Guess where those screw holes end up? Yep, right across where your joint is. Hang on a minute, you say. I'm not going to use a skinny little 6mm panel. I'm going to use a chunkier 9mm panel, which will give me a fatter, heavier door. Well, that's all very well, but with a fatter, heavier door, you're going to use a bigger hinge, and again, guess where those screw holes end up? Right on the seam. Anyway, aesthetics and flush hinges aside, there were a couple of other things that I didn't like about making the doors this way, and I think what I'll do is we'll just make one quickly, and I'll just show you what I mean. So we've got our backing board, we've got our strips. If you were doing this for real, you do it far more carefully. I'm just sort of blatting this through quickly. Okay, so that's just clean, the edges cleaned up very quickly. The glue's not dry, it's just sort of pinned together. And you can see fairly obviously, you're going to need to do a little bit of work. You need to be pretty conscientious in your technique when you're putting these together, because it's easy to get them all a little bit gappy. But you've got lots of little, even with a headless pinner like this, you've got lots of little nail holes that you've got to fill. So suddenly that's sort of feeling like a bit more work than it was. It's only a little door, it is very thin, but it would probably do. Again, you know, all the edges have had to be cleaned up. You've got to either edge band these to avoid that sort of double layer that you can see there, or put a wooden edging around it, or a lot more technique in your painting to actually try and lose that. The other thing that I wanted to show you quickly is if you're not using flush hinges, you might be using sort of Euro style concealed hinges like these. On a door of this thickness, it can be a bit problematic. I'll get over to the drill press and I'll show you. As you might imagine, I do quite a few of these Euro style kitchen hinges, so I've got a drill press dedicated to it. This is set up for a 22mm thick rail and style, 22mm thick door and an 18mm carcass, so I'm just putting a 4mm packer in there just to raise it up because we've got an 18mm thick door here effectively. Here's the next sort of little niggle with these doing the doors this way. If you're using Euro style hinges like these, they need a 14mm deep hole boring into the door to fit them. So yeah, you're going straight through the 12mm piece and into a little bit of this piece of the 6mm panel, and there's not a lot of meat left on there, so you really need to do this with a drill press. I've cut plenty of these doors freehand, and it's very easy. Just go a little bit too deep and get the outside of the just to pimple a little bit. It's you know, and once that's happened, there's nothing you can do about it. The other thing that's a concern is when you drill the hole for to fix the hinge in place, you go straight through. You can just see it there. So what's happened is the 16mm screws go through the 12mm backer far enough to just push through and push into the 6mm, but they don't go far enough in to actually grab it. They just push it out of the way, and that's, again, you're introducing a weakness at a point where you need a strength. You can just see that. If I squeeze it there, it actually shifts back and forth, and this has had a good couple of hours to set the adhesive. Now you're probably thinking, well, if you want a thicker door but you want to keep a 6mm panel, why not just make the backing board thicker? Which is absolutely what you could do. The trouble is, the next commonly available size up for the backing board would be 18mm. So an 18mm backing board and a 6mm panel, you're looking at a 24mm thick door, almost an inch thick, which for a little door like this is all starting to get a bit chunky, and certainly too fat to be using these Euro style concealed hinges. So it would seem to be the sweet spot for this would be a 15mm 5/8 backing board and a 6mm panel. The trouble is 15mm MDF or sheet material generally isn't that widely available. I'm lucky I have a very good timber yard nearby, and they do actually stock it, but the amount they sell is tiny compared to the more standard sizes, 12mm, 18mm, 6mm and so on. So if you have to start chasing the material down or buying more than you really need just to get hold of it, you know, this was supposed to be the easy, simple way of making this door. It's suddenly starting to look like an awful lot of work, isn't it? So that, in a nutshell, is fundamentally why I don't make doors this way anymore. There are better ways to do it. It's that simple. There's nothing wrong with doing them this way, as long as you understand the limitations. But even if you have all the gear, a drill press if you're using Euro style hinges, a headless pinner or some other way to get the panel, the mop panel, clamped to the backer board soundly, you're still into extra work to prep and paint the edges. It's, you know, it feels like it's going to be an easy option, but actually to do it well takes a lot more work than you might think. And in reality, if you've got a router table, admittedly that's a big if, but a grooved style with a panel that slots into it, a rail that's grooved on 3 sides, and a loose tenon fitted in, that makes a pretty easy door to me. It's simple, it's strong, and it's quick to make. And I'm going to carry on making my doors this way. Listen, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful and perhaps interesting. If you have, give it a thumbs up, share it freely, and don't forget, you can always subscribe. Then you'll be notified whenever I post something new. I'll put a new video up every week, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.